polygamy was all about keep your mouth shut and do what I tell you. No, that's criminal. That's so sad. And see, they thought what they were doing, they could do anything they wanted, and it was right, because they were these chosen few. And they saw themselves as a chosen people. Whatever they did, no big deal.
Well, the human rights violations in polygamy are what? Tell us what they are.
There's a lot of incest, a lot of sexual abuse, intermarrying in that the incest, because they intermarry because they want to keep their bloodlines pure. And
don't they understand what that really does?
They don't want to. They don't want to understand. They ignore it. And some of them really don't care. They just do it.
What are the results that you've seen from this interbreeding?
Some of them have been born with different deformities, and I feel so bad for the mothers and the children. But they just think they're this chosen people. They can do whatever they want. And many of the women during labor, they need medical help, and they won't get it for them because they're afraid of being caught. So the mothers just suffer or die.
So they're actually having these babies without professional medical...
Exactly. And they don't know how to get help, nor do they want to. My sister was a midwife, and she helped them a lot. And Irene Kingston, she delivered over 3,000 babies in her lifetime. She sensed when they needed medical help, and she wanted to get it for them. Sometimes they wouldn't let her, and that was really hard on her.
But my sister, Irene Spencer, helped deliver babies in Mexico, and she had no experience except they needed her. And more people kept calling her when they had a baby, and that's the kind of medical help they got. Bless her heart, she went to do what she could to help out her friends.
Gosh.
But she didn't have any nurses training at all. The average man has a hard time supporting one large family of 6 to 10 children.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me how these families survive financially.
Many of them have to go on food stamps, go on state assistance. They excluded women's feelings because that made them weak, when actually they were being compassionate. The truth was manifesting, but they were taught to overlook it and to not really use those inherent capacities, because the priesthood says you shouldn't do that, so you better not do it.
So emotion was not allowed?
No, this particular group, the Kingston stood up, Charles Eldon Kingston, and he thought he was the one mighty and strong. Of course, his father was teaching him a lot of BS, and they were just narcissistic people without feelings and emotions.
How severe was it in the Kingston?
Women were working their socks off. They were working so hard all the time because they had the sole responsibility of supporting their families and feeding their kids, whereas the husband was off copulating with other women.
Right.
And so she had to do it all.
Increasing his posterity to
Yes.
become a god.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, big hottie.
And isn't it a part of their belief system that copulating with many mates makes a man a god, and the same behavior would make a woman a slut, deserving of destruction?
Oh man. Yeah. I've thought of that too.
In every case of polygamy I have ever seen, the women have less and less and less of a husband of love and emotion in their life, and more responsibility to support themselves and each other as time goes by while he's off copulating with his...
Yep.
Is that what you can see?
Oh yes, yeah. Most of it in the Kingston group, the women were working at the businesses inside the group and trying to keep the families going, and the husband was trying to keep them going by running around everybody, copulating with the women. And oh my, he was just a big stud, out there having a good time. The girls were really controlled. They weren't allowed to go to school because girls, they felt like it was harder for them, of course, because they had to obey, and it was just unfair. I know I was never allowed to fall in love. I never had known what that was like, to love a man sexually, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I couldn't conjure that up. Heck, I got along better with my brothers and had more fun with them than I ever did with the husband. They take everything away from you.
We define everything.
Your real emotions, you can't have them, because it would make it difficult for the husband and the people living in polygamy. You have to lie. You have to treat all this stuff under a lie.
And do you believe that the sister wives show, the women that get up there and say how wonderful polygamy is, they're living that lie that they have to live in order to get their salvation?
Yep.
I have seen many women back and endorse polygamy until they got out of it and away from it, and then they spoke just the opposite and said, well, I had to do that, I was there.
Yep, and it is a concentration camp.
Yeah.
It's horrific for some of the people. It really is, because of the men aren't educated very well, haven't gone to any school. They have been treated unfairly as children. They have been, their father has been cruel to them and won't let them identify themselves as their father. They needed professional help.
The polygamous kids do need professional help. They have been brainwashed into believing that there's a bloodthirsty and terrifying God that's going to destroy them if they don't do these things.
And that's, when you said that, I thought, that's right. I remember I wanted to bring that out, that there is not a God of love. They never talk about love.
No.
You shouldn't love. You can't love.
Our guest today is Kathleen Covington.
I am Rowanna Erickson's granddaughter, and related to pretty much the whole polygamous community through that side.
So Rowanna Allred was the head of the AUB before he was basically assassinated in his Murray, Utah office.
Right.
And he is your grandfather.
Yes.
And then Owen Allred took over the AUB, and now it's Lemoyne Jensen. And isn't this the same group that the sister wives Cody Brown
Yes,
belong to?
it is.
Please tell us about your life in polygamy.
It's hell. Pure hell. The reason that you go into it is because you want to please your parents. You want to do what God wants you to do. Yes, and sacrifice means that you have to live that way. I wanted to do what Heavenly Father wanted me to do. I wanted to do what was right. I was told that the church had left these laws and that somebody had to live them because this was the last dispensation, and that because the church had left them, we were there to pick up the pieces. It depends on the circumstances and what kind of friendships they've made, but there's been some trading if they let them marry theirs, so they have, I guess, swapping, daughter swapping, I don't know what you call it.
I would call it that.
I have most of the Yearning for Zion Ranch, and the people involved in that are my relatives. First, second, third cousins. They're very,
Yes.
very close.
Right.
And, once I say, okay, well, I'm related to so-and-so, Rowanna Allred's another one that it's like, okay, well, I might not be related to him, but he was this to me, or he was this to me. And he seemed to be quite well known and a very important person. And it's okay to break the law because they're living a higher law. So
Right.
they're above the law. The scary thing is it's supported by the government. It's supported by different people in the church. They have people that from different groups that work for the Attorney General's office, for that work in child and family services. There's a man that works in Sanpete County that is in child and family services who doesn't want his name out because he's part of the AUB group.
How old you were when you got married?
On my 17th birthday.
And who did you marry?
A man that was 21 years older than me as a third wife.
As a third wife.
Okay, I married the man. He was, 21 years my senior. I was third wife. He believed that the family should live together. He was a convert from the church. And he believed that he was the ruler over me. So if he broke the rule, even though it was good or bad, if he broke a rule, I had to obey him because that was my only way to heaven. So if he told me to do something that I knew was wrong, I had to do it anyway because otherwise I couldn't make it to heaven. And it's taught that you have your free agency until you do something against your husband or you do something against the group. I was married and I had my choice, but I didn't feel like I wouldn't have chosen him.
Right.
He wasn't my style. I didn't even like him, but I thought, God's behind this, so when I marry him, I'm going to learn how to love him. What it ended up being is I had two really jealous sister wives who would give him stories about what I was supposed to be doing, and he would believe them and never check up on it.
Isn't that common, though?
It's so common.
Isn't passive-aggressive behavior between these wives absolutely destructive in almost every one of these families?
Yes, and you know what? I know God doesn't support it. There's no way. I had, he believed them. In fact, even after I left him, he was telling his brother, well, she did this and this and this and this, and his brother, who knew me, said, no, she didn't. She didn't do any of those. The girls told that to you, and you believed them. She never did that. It was them.
But they don't care to solve the problems in their family.
No.
The fighting, jealous women
It's
makes
the
them
women's
feel good.
fault.
The women are fighting over him, basically.
Yeah, it's the women's fault.
And it's an ego trip for him, and they're bad. Aren't the women are told that they're evil? And aren't they told that they're evil if they're jealous or have feelings or cry or anger or anything normal? Aren't they told that those are negative emotions?
Those are negative emotions that should not be
allowed.
that aren't allowed, that if you were close enough to God, you would not be having those feelings.
So jealousy, pain, anger, fear, anything less than a smile on your face is an evil spirit or something you should get over.
Yeah, it's my problem. It's not theirs, and it's not his. It's my problem because I'm having jealousy. It's my problem because my sister wives are attacking me. It's my problem because I'm doing something that makes them that way.
So, for you to have any normal, natural feelings, there's something wrong with you. And yet this same man that tells you that expects you to be sweet and loving when he beds a woman, anytime he beds a woman, every time he beds a woman, and every time you have less and less and less of a husband, there's something wrong with you if you don't like it.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you bed another man, what would he do?
Oh, you'd be lost for eternity.
If you lived through it. Some of them
Yeah.
believe that it's their holy right to destroy the woman, and some of them don't do that physically, but they will destroy her in other ways.
Emotionally, which is what I
So
get.
what happened to you? And because you dared to think.
Yeah, I dared think on my own. I dared leave. I dared try to give my children a decent life and a normal life, as much as I knew what normal was. And essentially, I had no right to leave. I had the leader of the group go to because I went on food stamps after going for 2.5 weeks without anything but bread for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I said, my children deserve better. If everybody was, just having bread for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that would be another story. But it wasn't, and it wasn't healthy. So I went on food stamps against his wishes because I would expose him. Yeah. And so therefore, I was put to trial in front of his version of the United Order and told to get myself in order, that I had committed fornication for going on food stamps,
Fornication!
Yes, but that was his version of fornication, and so therefore, until he felt like I had paid the ultimate price, or whatever he wanted me to do, that he would not spend any time with me or my children or do anything with me.
This is another thing that's really common. They will put a woman on the shelf literally for years if she doesn't comply with their every wish, and they call this freedom of choice.
Yes.
They got these women.
I had the choice to keep my children on bread.
Yeah, and they call this freedom of choice for women. The polygamy is a choice. These women cannot testify against these guards when they're living in the concentration camp.
No. And on top of that, you know, the continuation of me going on food stamps, Owen Allred and some of his people went to my neighbors door to door, knocked on their door and told them not to help me because I had committed fornication, that they would take care of it, that women out of order were their responsibility, and they would take care of it the way they needed to take care of it.
In a celestial family, women were not allowed to handle finances. Didn't you know that you weren't entitled to have any money or any means of self-sufficiency?
Oh, I didn't.
Because they can't control you if you're not needy and burdened with a lot of children.
Yes.
So you were messing them up.
I really messed him up. I did a right face. I mean, to have Owen Allred, I was living probably about 5 hours from Salt Lake, and he made a special trip to knock on my neighbors' doors to tell them that not to help me because I was crazy. My ex, Dennis Matthews, basically kept changing the rules. I would try to please him. I would try to do what he said. I would try to be the good wife, and as soon as I got that down to where I was doing it right, he changed the rules and I was wrong again. I would get to the point where I didn't know what was up or down. I felt like I was dangling off of a noose all the time because it didn't matter what I did, it was going to be interpreted the worst possible way, and even if I didn't do something, something would be created and I would be wrong. And my children too. My children were attacked, especially my two oldest. And my son, because he had a savings of $40, was told he had to give that money to the other sister wife. And that money was literally ripped from him and given to the other woman.
The principle of the idea of equality is lost.
I see this everywhere and always have, and even in my own family. I remember thinking that about my own dad. He got the royal treatment. All of his wives brought him luxurious food. They saved their pennies to buy the roasts and the meat and whatever was going to give him the most royal treatment when they were there, and fix him the best meals. And when he traveled, he got to go and go and go and go, and they all got to go with him or take turns, or he was going by himself. He got to do a lot of traveling because he was the leader and the council member and was requested to do his priesthood duties. He got the best of the best. And he would make a business trip into what he considered a priesthood business trip, into a rendezvous, and maybe take a wife or two and maybe not. But I remember watching that and going, oh my gosh, my dad has a good life. He has all those women who are doting on him, fighting and vying for his love and attention and trying to be the best in every way they can. And that was part of my life. And even though there were two wives, I remember thinking all the time the same things. Boy, I got to fix the best meals. I got to be on my best behavior. I should dress up. I should look sexy. I should, all these should, so that I could have the attention that I needed and wanted. And whether I wanted it to be competitive or not, it was I wanted to be loved and recognized, and I saw that happening on the other side of the fence as well. The men do, in many, many ways, get that end of their needs met. They get the best. It appears in most cases always that the women are so busy loving and doting on him to be loved. I want to be loved. I want to be recognized. I want you to love me. I want you to know who I am. And of course, the more wives there are, the more that happens for him, but the less the woman gets that attention and love, because now she's got to vie for that even more. She might save and starve her children in order to spend a date with her husband so she can be loved and attention. So all week long they're eating beans and rice and whatever, nothing, and bread and milk in my case, so that by Friday I can afford to go buy a steak or two so that when my husband's eating there, we get this great meal. Or what? It's just consistently appearing, and in most cases, even now, wherever I look around, it's still the same. All the women are still trying to get their husband's attention by how they dote on him and say, oh, my God, here's my God. You know, you got to love me. You have to love me back. I'm going to be good. I'm going to be better then. And it wasn't every night of the week, but there was consistently what I felt as inequality when I'm the one who has to stay home with the kids and raise the kids and get up breakfast, lunch, and dinner meals and do the dishes and clean the house and do all the laundry and keep up the yard and pull the weeds and all this stuff. And my husband can come and go as he pleases because he doesn't have to take the kids with him. And he doesn't have to, and this is, I'm not talking about just my husband, I'm talking about all of them. I watched my brothers do this. Leave their wives and go out with the other wives and go out again with another wife and go out again with another wife while they're all overwhelmed with the kids and the tears and the crying and the snotty noses and the sick kids. And in fact, I'm just remembering I saw that on public television. You know, somebody stuck with all the kids for a while. No, I haven't had a date in a long time. And so it's consistently part of the lifestyle as a man have, in that sense, I would say, way better care, food, love, doting on, so forth. And so my husband only had 2 wives, and I felt like a single mother. And so I thought all the time, I felt my heart was out to those who had many wives, because I thought they only got to go, you know, once in a blue moon. That was my mother. She got to go more when she was younger because there were fewer wives. But as Dad's family got larger and larger, her time to go out, and in fact, by the time it was maybe 13 trips that my dad took, and it might have been my mother's time, doesn't mean she got to go anywhere. It was about whether she had to work and show up to help provide for all those kids and family members and younger wives and younger children. And so consistently the trips and the money were in favor of my father. And there's no way our family was making it financially, especially by the more children I had and the more children she had. It was a requirement. And most of the women that go to work, I noticed, were housekeepers. I cleaned houses for years and years and years and years. After a while, I wasn't always watching the kids. I was taking my babies and I'd go clean houses. And then our younger kids were left with the older kids, which I talked about before, which creates big problems when you have babies raising babies and children raising children. And still there was never enough. And yet you've got families who are having more and more and more and more and more children. How on earth can the majority, and they don't, provide for the families? It's just pretty much impossible. I've seen families that look and appear wealthy, and you've got kids raising kids while the women all go to help provide for that family, or the majority of them.
And how does the man live in that family?
And he's off to work, comes home, all of them making the best meals. Oh, my honey's here, I gotta behave myself. Back to that royal treatment for their God of the house, that he'd rather any day be at the other wife who's going to feed him better when it comes to the meals. And this young person was telling me about their dad who had, I honestly can't remember, but way over 15 wives, somewhere in the 20s. And so, of course, she only saw him every 25, 30 days, whenever he decided to show up. But if she got to know ahead, and of course he was letting him know because he wanted the best meal, and she did the same thing. It didn't matter that they ate literally rice, white food forever, indefinitely. It mattered that her God was going to show up. She had to give him the royal treatment and be accepted and loved, and so therefore she would throw out the royal carpet and no food for him, and so she'd save all the money she would normally spend so she could give him this immaculate meal, this great honor, because he's at her house, and all the wives, all of them were doing that. There might have been one or two that didn't give a crap, and because they didn't want him around anyway. But if you don't want them around, you know how to do it. You just don't fix them food, and you complain and you gripe in there like, I'm not coming back. I want to be treated royally because I deserve it and in God. Where sister wives, true relationships are based on always what their husband's going to think, and always based on who's going to love me more, and always deceptive because it's based on pleasing my husband, and it has to be, even though they don't want it to be competitive, it has to be for survival's sake. It has to be. If I'm not going to give him the best treatment, he certainly doesn't want to come over. He can go somewhere else.
Well, they say if a man has 7 wives, then that qualifies him, and so women do everything they can to try to help him get at least that number. I would see these men that were supposed to live these holy higher laws come home drunk. They would come home with smoking, reeking with liquor on their breath. My mother you used to cry herself to sleep because my dad would come home that way. Yet here he's one of the priesthood people going to heaven, and she's going to help make him a god. And she would feel bad because he could buy liquor and cigarettes. He couldn't buy her anything that she even needed when she was sick, anything at all to help her out. I remember people say, oh, don't listen to them, they're Olive's children. Like my mother was wrong and she was subservient, and whatever she did, she tried with all her heart to do what was right, but she didn't have a backbone, she didn't speak up, she didn't defend us, and she just was barely trying to cope with life. But it's just sad that even though she went through all of this, to the very end, she got right back into polygamy. She got sealed to a man for eternity. She wanted all of us in polygamy, even though she had suffered, because she felt that she was going to go to hell if she didn't. And they keep education from you. They didn't, just like in Colorado City, there's no TV, there's no magazines, there's no newspapers, there's no books other than the few religious books that they want you to read, but you couldn't read anything else. And so you don't know that there's anything else. Your mind hasn't been opened up to it. And they don't want you to know, because in ignorance they can control you. If you get a little common sense and know what's going on, why you're not going to allow people to do this to you. So they keep you ignorant and barefooted and pregnant. Well, they always told us from the time you were a child to do not betray the brethren. And betraying the brethren is questioning the brethren. When you see a man marry a little tiny girl that's just hadn't even reached puberty yet, and marry it, and you ask why this is happening, why, that's God's will. You know, they found out from God that's who they should marry. Why are you questioning God? And something must be wrong with you. You're not humble. You know, get on your knees and pray and ask the Lord to show you, oh, this is great and wonderful. So then you start doubting yourself because, you know, you tried using your brain. It didn't get you anywhere. The men make the rules and all the children belong to the man. And so that's another reason what woman is going to try to leave and she can't take her children. First place, she can't support them and she can't take care of them. I was threatened. And they find out that I have all these children and all these wives. It's going to be your fault because you will have me put in prison. These women are going to suffer and these children are going to suffer just because of you, because you wouldn't keep your mouth shut. You were afraid that they would find out about it. Even when I had my nervous breakdown, he'd care whether I had a nervous breakdown. He wanted me out of the way. I went to try to get help. They were going to give me help. He wouldn't let me. He took me and hauled me back to Mexico and got me back out there. Had no help whatsoever. And I wasn't to discuss it with anybody. And I went months where I was just surviving every day. My oldest daughter, Donna, had to take care of my children and my babies, and I could not function. I was literally dying emotionally. It's a miracle that I'm sitting here today and that I didn't end my own life and destroy myself, because I was in such a destructive situation. If people only knew the nervous breakdowns and the suicides and the things that happen in people's lives, but they deny them, they shove them to one side, they try to keep it quiet. It's not talked about because they can't be wrong. They're God's holy people. And boy, we don't mention those kind of things.